Hey, listen, learn how to make the most consistent drip coffee using the Gabi here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to the Obitz Lab. Hey, listen, today we're talking about the Gabi. And the Gabi is a device. This is the Gabi right here. That you can use when you're doing filter coffee. Here we're using a Kalita today, but you could use it with a V60, you could use it with a Chemex, it doesn't really matter. But it takes a lot of the technique of pouring your water in over the grounds out of the mix, out of the picture. Or, you know, if you didn't have a gooseneck where you can get that right kind of pour and you were just boiling water on the stove or however you were doing it, it helps with that a lot too. Now, we featured the Gabi in a travel video that we had down in, where was that? Galveston?
Galveston.
Yeah. But if you come in close, what you can see is that there are two circles. And you're instructed to fill this one up first and then this one up second. And what it does is it makes sure that the grounds get wet evenly.
Yep, you can see that it works.
That's right. Oh, I think I made a little bit of a mess. But I really like the Gabi, particularly in the afternoon when I'm making a cup of coffee and I'm trying to like make the perfect cup of coffee and I don't want to think too hard about it. The Gabi was just a really easy device to use. Now this one is called the Gabi Master B, and I went to order another one the other day and I couldn't find it. And in its place, I found something called the Master A. And I'm like, well, I got to get the Master A. Now, the Master B, when it was available, I think was in the $20 to $30 range, right?
About $29, as I recall.
That's right. And then, but this is in the $40 range. Now, it looks like you're getting a heck of a lot more for $10, but I thought we'd just go ahead and unpack it all together. Let me get this out of the way and see what comes in the Gabi A. And it comes in like an all plastic kind of container. Looks like we're ready to go into space here. And it comes with all these parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you know, I thought I was working with a Rubik's Cube here for a minute because there were just a lot of parts, and you know, I like to assemble things right away without instructions, but I had to actually get the instructions out to put it together. But it essentially performs the same function as the Master B, the Master A does, and now hopefully I'll still remember
how to put it
together.
Well, I'll figure it out together.
But you can see with this piece right here, there is that controlled even drip, right? So water enters this particular well and it drips out in just micro droplets throughout a bed. And so you know that that needs to rest right here because this is going to be the bed of the coffee. Mm-hmm. And then you're given a ring to put that in, so you can set it on a cup. But the biggest addition is this here, and this here snaps on just like that. And what this has is, if you come in closely, and I have trouble cleaning that hole, you might even see that it's just a very fine hole. So by having this sort of reservoir on top with that fine hole, it meters the amount of water that goes through to this chamber that then spreads out into those small holes. So everything is metered, meaning that you don't really have to worry about your technique too much, and you can just go straight into your cup of coffee, just like that, right? So
that.
Now it looks very contraption driven, and they have a lot of different recipes in the catalog, everything from strong to regular, light, and then finally they also have something that's called espresso. Of course, I think I'm reading the all Japanese section, so let me try to actually get to the English section because that'll be easier. Right, so the final one is espresso. I tried the espresso one, and of course it can't be espresso. It could be considered cheaters espresso because there's not the kind of pressure, but you certainly can get that kind of strength out of it.
Did it produce a crema?
Oh, no crema. It's very hard to get that crema without that 9 bars of pressure. But that's a good question. So my favorite, which we'll do here today, was something called the Strong, and that takes about 15 grams of coffee, which I've weighed out right here. It says 14.8 right now. Some piece of dust must have fell off. It was 15 grams. And then depending on which of these recipes, this one in particular, they phase the water in. So it's asking us to go with 40 grams of water first, kind of let that drip through, and you'll recognize that as the bloom, right? And then you can add your 120 milliliters after that, and then you'll get a very nice cup of strong coffee. Okay. Now, before I was using the Kalita, there's a smaller version of the Kalita that has smaller filters, but I don't have those smaller filters. So when I took my Kalita filters to put it in here, it wouldn't work, right? Because this would have to like sit on top of that, and that wouldn't work.
That looks wonky.
So I did cut my regular Kalita filters down, and you could do the same thing if that's.
Do you know if the Gabi sells filters to go with this thing?
No, because the Gabi is not about the filtration method, it's about the water distribution. So, like I said, you could use it with the V60, you could use it with a Chemex. I'm using it with the Kalita, and I chose to use the Kalita because, yeah, that'll just rest right on top now. Because this chamber does take a Kalita filter, right? Like you can't use a V60 filter on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you could, by the way, just take this chamber on top of your V60, right? So when I say you could use it with a V60 or you could use it with a Chemex, you would skip this part and just use this part. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, got it. So I need to do a little preheating, and there's so many bits and bobbles on here. I'm going to actually disassemble it, and you might consider this sort of a gratuitous effort here. But remember, when you don't preheat the parts that water's going to flow through, you will definitely create a heat sink. In other words, as the hot water is going through, the coldness of all the bits and pieces are going to steal away the heat and therefore steal away the brewing efficiency. I almost couldn't remember how to put this back together. That's the one thing. I could never use this thing in first thing in the morning, right?
Yeah,
it would just be too confusing for me, and I definitely think about it in terms of just in the afternoon. I have water that's on hold here on the kettle, and I'm keeping it at about 198 because I am using a darker roast. This is a BIGGBY Best. It's not a really dark roast, but it's in the dark roast range, and we just don't need the temperature to be so hot like you would with a light roast. And I'm going to grind this today on the Baratza. I'm going to give it a spritz, and the reason I give it a spritz is just to reduce the static cling to make sure that we get the right, we get everything to come through and no grounds get stuck up in the burrs and that kind of thing. I am going to grind at about a V60, right? So that's about a 15 on the Baratza. So let me just go ahead and get that going, and we'll get that in. And of course, I'll turn it off almost immediately because, as always, I like to pre-grind so that we don't have to listen to grinding on the show, right? So let me go ahead and tear this back out and get all these bits and pieces on. The one thing I don't think I did, I pre-wet everything except
the filter.
Were you going to catch that for me?
I was supposed to catch that for you.
Yeah. So just one more bit of fussiness right here.
I was actually too busy thinking about how fussy it is to have to preheat all of those different pieces.
I know, and you could probably skip that step and maybe you wouldn't notice anything, but you know, you're just not dealing with that many milliliters altogether. Get that back down to 0. Let's reset the timer also. Okay, so everything's at 0. I've got my coffee ground, and it smells super good. I'm going to get that coffee in here right now. And you know, one thing you always want to do is make sure that you level it out a little bit. So you just got to give it a little bit of a shake so it stays level. And now we're ready to go. Now the instructions read that our first pour is going to be 40 grams. And that 40 grams will come upon us very quickly. And that's essentially the bloom.
Right.
Okay, that's going to pre-wet everything. So I've got to keep an eye on this. 22, 31, 40.2, right? But still, yeah. So, okay, the water's being metered in. You can actually, I don't know if you can get in close here, you can see the water aggregating right here.
You see a lot of steam from over here.
And it's dripping through these little holes right here, right? And it's dripping just like a very slow shower head evenly over all those grounds. There's not going to be much coffee that's going to poke through because we're in that bloom phase. And we're looking to let gases off, but we're also looking to just sort of hydrate the grounds as much as possible. Okay, and at some point there's just not enough water pressure to let it go through those little holes. You can still see a little bit of water left in here, and when it stops flowing through, it's kind of when you know you need to add your 120 milliliters on top of that. So we need 160 altogether, right? It was the 40 plus 120, so we're going to get to 160. And you know what? I don't have to pay attention to how I'm pouring it, whether it's fast or short. I don't have to be going like this. This is the charm of the Gabi. What am I at? 137?
137.
And I'm shooting for 160?
Yeah, and you're at 159.
Oh my goodness.
Well played.
Okay, good. So look, that's it, right? So although I made it look difficult getting it out, and all that kind of thing, you wouldn't necessarily be in that world if you were using this on a regular basis. Like I said, it is a little fussy, and I would only use it in the afternoon. But I've gotten really comfortable with the idea of using the Gabi A. And the reason I got comfortable with it is that when I get to that like 3 o'clock cup of coffee, that 3 o'clock drip cup of coffee, I kind of want it to be perfect, reliable, consistent, right? And we've done everything to make it consistent. We've controlled the temperature of the water. We've controlled the grind here. And now we're controlling how the water drips through. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
And one other thing, it's too bad that this video isn't scratch and sniff because that coffee smells amazing.
It is amazing. It smells really good. And now, you can also, this is the beauty of it, once you make that last pour, you can walk away, right? You can walk away, do something else, turn off your kettle, clean your grinder, do some dishes, throw some trash away, whatever it is that you're going to do. And when you come back, you're going to have a perfect cup of coffee waiting for you, okay? Now, it's about ready to do its last drain, and we can still see that it's drip, 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 very even. And I'll put that to the side for a moment here. And it still needs to go through the bed of grounds. If you'll come and take a look, well, actually I can bring it to you a little bit right here. There's no more standing water. And we'll look at this at the end and see if it was an even extraction or not. But essentially, we're ready to drink at this point. Get that over here. Now, it just made this is not a big cup of coffee, and most of the world doesn't drink a 16-ounce cup of coffee. Now, we do in the morning, but when you get to that afternoon, it's really nice to have just a little toss of coffee. And again, This is the coffee I had yesterday and the day before and the day before that using the Gabi. Really a beautiful cup of coffee. So, you know, I think you can probably hear my bias already, right? So often we're asking ourselves,
are we going to keep it, crush it, or gift it?
right. And this is a keep for me. And, you know, although it is fussy, and, you know, sometimes I really don't like plastic bits and pieces in coffee. And if I can sort of see past that there's these plastic parts, I'm a keep on this. It has extreme redeeming value from a consistency perspective.
And I think if there are people out there that have the Gabi Master B,
yes,
you should really hang on to that because they're not making them anymore.
no, that will be a collector's item, that's for sure. Yeah. All right, cheers again.
Cheers.
And on this note, we'll leave you with this, and that's when you love the world,
the world will love you right back.
Right on. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Being Basics is brought to you by One Big Island in Space.com with 2 G's.